The freight elevator at the Aldine Tower came up slow, at 7:05 on a Monday in October, and Vivian Ash stood inside it, with her hands folded over the front of a borrowed grey cleaning uniform, watching the cold floor numbers climb. The cart Nora Vega had wheeled in behind her smelled faintly of lemon polish and warm rags from the dryer. Outside, somewhere far down on 51st Street, a delivery truck reversed, and the small metallic tone of it carried through the shaft. Inside the quiet elevator, the cool air was cool and slightly damp, the way the back of house always was at this hour, before the stone building's heat caught up to the day. It was Vivian's 8th Monday on this elevator. She was not, technically, on the cleaning crew. She was the wife of the man whose name went third on the brass plate by the warm lobby, Brennan, of Brennan Ashford, and she had a corner office of her own, 3 streets over in Tribeca, where she ran a small bookkeeping practice for non-profits. But on Monday mornings, for 8 weeks now, she had been coming in through the freight side with Nora and the cart and the lemon polish, and she had not yet figured out a way to tell her husband that this was where she went. "You're brushing the carpet wrong again," Nora said now, deadpan, without turning her head. "You drag from the wall. The dust likes the wall. You can quote me." Vivian started, and then let the sentence go, because Nora already knew. The elevator opened on the 23rd floor, and the long hush of the partners' floor came at them all at once. Empty, cold blue, the cold morning sun not yet up over Park, the quiet conference room glass still smudged from Friday's late meeting. Vivian wheeled the cart through, set it inside the alcove by the kitchenette, took the soft cloth off the top, and started on the long table. Nora went to the carpet. Somewhere on a lower floor, a door closed. The first new hires were not due until 8:30. The welcome breakfast for them was set to begin on 22. There was no reason, in any version of how this floor ran, for one of them to be on 23 already at 7:15. She heard the door click anyway. Vivian heard her before she saw her. The bright, slightly performing voice of someone speaking aloud to people who were not in the room. "I'm walking in right now, you guys. I'm here. I am here. Oh my God, I just want this so badly. I am not turning around for anyone." A pause. "Yeah, the cafeteria. I know, I came up too high. There's nobody up here. It's literally just..." The voice came around the corner of the partner's floor, and the woman attached to it walked into the long conference room where Vivian was standing with the polish cloth. She wore a navy blazer that had been pressed inside the dry cleaner's plastic so recently that you could still see the seam of the wire shoulder where it had hung. Her name tag was clipped to the lapel. Chen Park, P., Associate. She saw Vivian. She did not, exactly, see her. Her eyes ran across the cloth, the cart in the alcove, the grey uniform, and went on past. "Hold on, you guys," she said into the phone, not lowering the volume. "Hold on. I have to tell you what I just saw. I am literally living a moment right now." Vivian set the cloth down on the long wood table and lifted the other end. There is this woman polishing the conference table like it's a sacred object, like she's saving lives, like, I don't know, like the long wood table cares. I've worked too hard to ever be on that side of the glass. I will literally never be that person. I cannot even imagine the shape of that life. Like, what does she even think about for 8 hours a day? Other people's fingerprints? She laughed. The laugh was a little too loud. It rang off the glass. She turned, mid-laugh, and saw Vivian's reflection in the polished wood. Caught herself, tucked her phone half down by her hip, lifted her chin, and offered Vivian the bright, slightly cornered smile of a woman who has just remembered there is another body in the room. "Oh, sorry, didn't see you there. I'm so sorry, the acoustics in here. Anyway, you probably don't even speak. Anyway." She tugged the cuff of her blazer down past her wrist. "Do you know where the partners' lounge is? I just need a minute before the welcome thing. I'm Priya." The door from the kitchenette swung open, and Nora Vega came back into the room with a tray of clean glasses and a coffee carafe. She did not look at Priya. She set the tray down at the head of the long wood table where the senior partners would sit at the 11 o'clock, and went back out through the swinging door without a word. "Through that door," Vivian said, and then left. "There's coffee already brewed." Priya's face brightened. "Oh my God, thank you. Thank you so much. You're a queen. I owe you I don't know. I owe you something." She crossed the room and pushed through the swinging door, and her voice picked up again on the other side, talking, still, into the phone, the bright performance back on. Vivian heard her say, "I will not be that person," one more time. And then the kitchenette door swung shut, and the partner's floor was quiet again. Vivian stood very still, with both hands on the cloth. Across the long wood table, in the wide mirror of the polish, she could see herself. A little tired, hair pulled back in a low knot, no rings on her hands, no makeup yet, the uniform 2 sizes too big and gathered at the waist with one of Nora's spare hair ties. She had been told a version of that little speech once before, when she was 19, and on a custodial crew at a state university outside Albany. A dean had stood in his loafers next to her bucket and told her, in a kindly tone, that girls like her did not belong at the table she was scrubbing. The cloth had felt about this temperature in her hands then too. She did not put it down. She finished the long side of the table the way she had finished the dean's parquet floor, thoroughly, slowly, with her thumb pressed flat against the seam where the wood met the leather edge so the cloth would not catch. She told herself, very calmly, that she was not the person Priya had been describing. She also told herself, less calmly, that she could not be sure her husband, on his most distracted morning of the year, would have known the difference if he had walked through. Her left thumb went over the empty band of skin where her ring should have been. She caught herself doing it. Set the cloth down. Picked it up again. Nora came back into the room with the second carafe. She looked at Vivian. She did not say anything for a moment. Then she said, "There's worse to come in here this week. You can quote me on that, too." "I know," Vivian said. "Then put a different face on before you cross the warm lobby." "I will." Nora leaned on the back of one of the conference chairs. 8 Mondays I have let you up that elevator without asking a question. I'm not asking now. I am only saying, if the answer's that the man on the brass plate doesn't know you've been up here, the answer's older than that. You can quote me. Vivian's hand smoothed slowly along the edge of the table. "I was going to, you weren't. That's all right. Carry the carafe out for me, the big one. I'm done with the carpet." Vivian carried the carafe out. The freight elevator came back up slow at 20 to 8, and she rode it down with Nora and the cart and the cloth, and changed in the small staff bathroom on the loading dock level, and walked out of the Aldine Tower in her own coat at 4 minutes past 8, and the doorman tipped his cap to her by reflex and called her Ma'am, because that was what he called every woman who walked past him in a long camel coat at that hour, and not because he knew that the woman in the long camel coat had, 6 floors above his head, just been the woman Priya Chen Park did not want to be when she grew up. A taxi let her off at the corner of Greenwich and Charles at 20 past 8. She walked the last 3 blocks home. She took the long way, because the long way passed a small flower shop, where a man was setting white tulips into buckets, and she had wanted to look at tulips for 40 minutes by then. Inside the warm brownstone, quiet, warm, the radiators ticking, she stood for a minute in the doorway, with her warm coat still on. Her husband had been gone since 6. Marcus's coffee mug was on the warm kitchen counter, rinsed, set upside down on the towel. Beside it was the small velvet box. He had taken it out of her dresser drawer last night, while she was at her shared office in Tribeca. He had left it there with a sticky note. The note said only, in his careful, narrow hand, "I miss your hand." She did not pick up the velvet box. She did not open it. She went upstairs in her warm coat and stood under the shower for 9 minutes, and then she came back down in a charcoal silk suit and dark heels and a thin gold chain at her collarbone, and she stood again at the warm kitchen counter and looked at the velvet box for a long moment, and then she put it back in the drawer of her dresser and went out to the foundation meeting at 9:30 without it. The day after that was the day everything stopped being quiet. 2 streets across town, on the 24th floor of the Aldine Tower, in the corner office, with the city laid out behind him like a careful set of accounts, Marcus Brennan was already on his 3rd cup of coffee. He had been there since 5:40. The Holloway pension pitch was Wednesday at 6. The deal was, and he had said this aloud to Kara on Friday afternoon and not been embarrassed by it, the deal of his uncle's career, finally landing on his desk a year too late for his uncle to see it. He pressed the heel of his hand under his sternum, twice, and looked at the framed photograph on the credenza. His mother at 34. The hand-painted backdrop behind her. The kind of studio portrait people used to take and not be ashamed of. She had been gone a long time. He kept the photograph there because, on most mornings, looking at it was the closest thing he had to a meeting with someone who was not on his schedule. He had taken his wife's ring out of her dresser drawer at 1:30 that morning. He had put it down beside her warm coffee mug because he could not think of anywhere else to leave it, and he could not bring himself to slide it onto her hand while she was sleeping, because she had been sleeping with her back to him for 16 nights running, and he was not entirely sure she wanted him to. He had written the sticky note 3 times before he kept the 3rd one. The first 2 had been longer. The 3rd was the only one that did not sound like a man trying to make himself the hero of his own apology. He looked at the photograph of his mother and thought, with the clear, small voice that came to him at 5:40 in the cold morning, before anyone else was at work, that the difference between being absent and being gone was sometimes only a question of who noticed. Kara Solomon walked in at 6:04 with a binder under her arm and a coffee for him. She was the only person in the stone building who carried a binder anymore. She set the binder down and the coffee down and looked at him. 1, you look terrible, she said. 2, Holloway moved the dinner to Wednesday at 5:30, his mother's car. 3, Vivian is on the foundation agenda at 11. 4, there's a new hire on 23 already. Welcome breakfast doesn't start for another 2 hours. I do not know what she's doing up there. Vivian's name is on the foundation agenda, Marcus said. He rephrased it as he heard himself. If you're saying she's coming in at 11, yes, I asked her last week. You asked her last Wednesday. She said she'd think about it. Today is Monday. You haven't asked her since. He pressed his sternum again. Then it's a good thing she still came. Kara looked at him for another beat. 5. The new hire on 23 is Priya Chen Park, the one from the Stanford program. She's keen. She is, in fact, the keenest I've seen in 3 years. I worry about the keen ones, Marcus. They do something stupid in the first week and then they spend the next 4 years explaining it. Send her down to the cafeteria. I'm not her mother. Then have Nora send her down. Nora won't talk to her until she's earned a sentence. He almost laughed. It came out as a breath through his nose. He looked once more at his mother's photograph on the credenza, and at the small ring of condensation his uncle's old water glass had left on the wood 12 years ago, and that nobody had been able to lift since. And he said, 11 o'clock. I'll be there. 6, Marcus, Kara said. She's been coming in at 7 for 2 months. Did you know that? He did not look up from the wood desk. I knew she was leaving the house at 6:30. That isn't the same. I know it isn't. Kara closed the binder. She did not open it again. I'll be in my office. The Holloway numbers are flagged on pages 4 and 7. Devon's mother asked if there'd be ice in the water this time. You can quote her. She left. The door closed behind her. Marcus looked at the photograph again, and after a long moment, he opened the lower drawer of his desk, and inside it was the small ring of plain platinum that he had carried home from his uncle's funeral 2 years ago this December, and which his wife had handed back to him 3 weeks ago at the warm kitchen table and said, very quietly, that she did not feel like herself wearing it on the mornings she went somewhere he could not picture. He had not been able to picture it. He had not asked. He had not asked, in fact, for 16 mornings running, and he was a man who took notes on his own behavior, and so he knew exactly which mornings. He closed the drawer. He had been told by his father, on the only useful afternoon of his father's life, that the difference between a marriage that lasted and a marriage that did not was the question of who was willing to look at it on the days nobody was watching. His father had then walked out of his mother's hospital room because he had not been able to look at her. Marcus had been 22. He had inherited from that afternoon a single private rule that he had never said out loud, and had not, recently, been keeping. That you do not become the man whose wife has to ask him to see her. He looked at the empty ring of condensation on the wood. He pressed his sternum once more. He drank the coffee Kara had set down. He waited for 11 o'clock. At 10:58, the long conference room on 23 was full of partners and a pitcher of ice water, and the soft, underwater quiet of a senior meeting that has not yet started. Kara Solomon was at the far end of the table with her binder open. The senior partners, Yannick Brennan Ashford, who was Marcus's cousin and the firm's compliance head, and Wendell Strick, who had been emeritus for 9 years, and still came in on the meetings he wasn't strictly invited to, were on the long side, facing the cold window. The 2 junior associates were on the short side. Priya Chen Park was the second of them. Her hair had been retied since 7. Her blazer was the same. Her name tag was still clipped. Marcus came in at 10:59, and Nora Vega came in at 11 exactly, through the kitchenette door, with a fresh carafe and a single guest. And the guest was Vivian. Vivian had her own coat over her arm. The charcoal silk suit on her, in the daylight of the partner's floor, did not look like a costume. It looked like a woman who had walked across town to a meeting she had a reason to be at. Nora set the carafe down at the senior end without a word, and tilted her head a quarter inch at the empty chair beside Kara. Vivian took it. She set her warm coat over the back of it. "Good morning, gentlemen," Kara said. 1. We have one foundation item, the Holloway side scholarship piece, on the agenda before the rate review. 2. Mrs. Brennan is our external CPA on the foundation. 3. She has 11 minutes. There was a small ripple along the table that the people on the table felt without being able to name. Yannick lifted his coffee cup an inch and set it down again. Wendell Strick, who had a habit of choosing the moment of a meeting at which he would first speak, did not speak. Marcus, at the head, looked across at his wife and did not exactly smile. He nodded once. She nodded once back. Vivian opened a slim notebook. She did not look down the table at Priya. Priya, 3 chairs down from her on the short side, had become very still. She had tugged the cuff of her blazer down past her wrist, and she had not lifted her head from her own legal pad since Vivian walked in. "The scholarship piece is in good shape," Vivian said. "The fund cleared its quarterly audit on Friday. There is one annotation in the Q3 sub-report I wanted to flag for the Holloway pitch, because if I can see it on a Friday afternoon, Mrs. Holloway's accountant will see it Wednesday morning, before her son sits down with Marcus." Yannick looked up. "Which one?" "Cell B7, Vivian said. The discretionary contingency line was rolled into the operating column rather than the reserve column. The total is right. The presentation is wrong. If the Holloway side is the kind of family office that reads cell by cell, and we have it on good information that it is, the presentation will be a sentence Mrs. Holloway notices." Kara wrote it down. "Whose pull was it?" Yannick said. "It was a copy-paste from the prior quarter," Vivian said. "I do not believe anyone meant anything by it. I'm going to send a corrected sheet to Kara by 1 o'clock today. If your IT will accept a redirect from my office account, the Wednesday morning printed version can use the corrected sheet, without anyone in the room on Wednesday having to explain a change." "Granted," Marcus said. Wendell Strick spoke for the first time. "Funny thing, when I was at this table 30 years ago, we kept the contingency line out altogether. The Holloways didn't read sub-sheets in those days. They read the man across the table." He smiled a thin smile around the room. "Mrs. Brennan, I don't think we've had the pleasure." "We met at the holiday party last December," Vivian said. "I sat at your table for the second course." "Did you?" Wendell said. Funny thing. I'll have to make a better account of it next time. Marcus, your wife has a quick eye. She does, Marcus said. Priya, 3 chairs down, did not look up from her legal pad. Her pen was still. The cuff of her blazer was still tugged down past her wrist. The agenda moved on. The rate review took 42 minutes. The foundation piece took 8. Vivian did not speak again during the rate review except once, to clarify a footnote for Kara. And when the meeting closed at noon, she put her coat back over her arm and shook hands with Yannick and Wendell and nodded a 4th time at Marcus from a polite, professional distance. And she crossed the room to the kitchenette door and pushed through it before Priya had lifted her head off her pad. Priya lifted it then. She lifted it because she heard the kitchenette door swing, and she lifted it because the way the door swung, a soft hush, a long return, was the same hush and return she had stood under at 7:17 that morning, with the phone 2 inches from her face, talking aloud to people who were not in the room. She lifted it because she had been doing arithmetic against her own legal pad for 35 minutes, and the arithmetic had finally finished. She did not move for a long, quiet second. She did not look at Marcus. She did not look at Kara. She looked at the empty chair beside Kara, where Vivian's coat had been, and at the back of the kitchenette door, which was, just then, still moving very slightly on its hinge. Kara was watching her. "Welcome to Brennan Ashford, Ms. Chen Park," Kara said, in a tone that was not particularly kind and not particularly cruel. "I'll need you in my office at 2. I'm running orientation for the foundation arm myself this year. You're on it." "Yes," Priya said. It was the first of her 8 uses of the word that week, and it came out small. Out in the long corridor, just past the 2nd elevator bank, 2 of the senior partners, Yannick on his way to 24, and Bertrand Mailloux, who ran the Boston desk and was in town for Wednesday, were already half a sentence into a conversation that was not meant to be overheard. "Quick eye," Yannick was saying. "Marcus said she would catch it. He didn't say what she'd flag." "She's a quiet wife," Bertrand said. "I have always liked the quiet wives. The loud ones tell you what they think, and the quiet ones know." She's not quiet, exactly. She's careful. Same thing in this building. Will she be at the Wednesday dinner? I doubt it. Marcus has been keeping that one close. I don't think he likes parading her. The Holloways don't either, by the way. Devon doesn't care for wives at working dinners. Old habit. Pity. I'd have liked to sit across from her. Vivian was on the other side of the quiet elevator bank, in the small carpeted alcove where the cleaning crew kept the spare bag of fresh linens for the executive bathroom. And the alcove was the only spot on 23 where 2 grown men with their backs to the quiet elevator could not see a third person standing 12 feet away holding a coat over her arm. She heard the whole exchange. The carpet was thick. The voices were not as low as the men thought. Bertrand was a baritone. Yannick laughed too easily. She stood very still and let it land. She did not, at any point, lift her thumb to her ring finger. She had taught herself, over 8 Mondays, not to. She walked to the quiet elevator. She wrote it down. She crossed the warm lobby in her own coat. She did not put on her sunglasses until she was on the cold sidewalk, because the doorman knew her now, and she did not want him to think anything had happened. She walked the 8 blocks back to her own office. Halfway across Spring Street, the sun came out from behind the cold November cloud bank a month early, and the brass of a delivery cart on the corner caught it and held it. And Vivian thought, very precisely, that there was a particular kind of small kindness. Strangers who tilted their head a quarter inch at you. Men who set out white tulips at 8 in the cold morning, that you could collect, for a while, without ever having to ask the person who was supposed to give it. She was halfway up the stairs to her shared office before she realized her hands had not stopped shaking since the kitchenette door had swung shut behind her on 23. The shared office in Tribeca was 3 rooms on the 2nd floor, over a stationer's. Her name was on the lease beside 2 other names. Marcus's lawyer had set it up under her maiden name, Ash, because that was how her bookkeeping clients had known her since the year she was 23. She kept that door painted a particular shade of green so that her clients, who came from small non-profits and small religious schools and one community health clinic in the Bronx, could spot it from the corner of Greenwich and Hudson. The green door was, on most weekday afternoons, the door she liked walking through more than any other door in her life. On the Monday afternoon of October the 19th, she pushed through it and shut it behind her, and stood with her back against the inside of it for a long, quiet minute. Her phone was buzzing. It was Marcus. She did not pick up. She let it ring 3 times, and then she sent it to voicemail. She set her coat on the rack. She poured herself a glass of water from the pitcher on the side table. She drank the whole glass. Then she sat down at her desk and pulled the corrected Q3 subsheet out from under the file folder where she had left it on Friday, and she emailed it to Kara at 12:46. And the message line said, B7 corrected. The rest you already know. The phone buzzed again at 12:51. It was Marcus. She let it go again. He texted then. Will you be home tonight? M. She looked at the text for a long time. She typed yes. She erased it. She typed I will. She erased that too. In the end, she did not answer the message, because there was no answer that was both honest and short enough. And she had been raised by a mother who taught her, when in doubt, to say less rather than more. By the time she walked home at 6, the cold had come back to West Village. She did not go through the warm kitchen. The brownstone had a side hall that led directly upstairs from the front door, and she took it. She heard Marcus in the warm kitchen, heard the small, particular sound of him pulling open the wine drawer that did not, in their house, contain wine, and she went on up. She washed her face. She changed into a soft gray sweater and dark jeans. She came back down 20 minutes later, and Marcus was at the warm kitchen counter, and he was looking at the small velvet box from the wood dresser drawer. He had taken it out again. He had put it back on the wood counter beside her warm coffee mug from the cold morning. He did not pretend not to be looking at it when she came in. I went to the meeting, she said. You did? You did not tell anyone I was coming. I should have. I'm sorry. I asked Nora to bring you in by the kitchenette because I thought... He stopped. He pressed the heel of his hand under his sternum. If you're asking me whether I was trying to make a kind of moment of it, no, I wasn't. I was trying to give you the kind of door where you didn't have to walk past Bertrand on the way in. They were on the other side of the slow elevator bank afterwards. I heard them anyway. He looked down at the wood counter. What did they say? Bertrand said he liked the quiet wives. Yannick said the quiet ones no. He said you have been keeping me close. She watched his face. Marcus, have you been keeping me close? He did not answer immediately. He pulled out one of the kitchen stools, and he sat on it, and he set his hands flat on the wood counter on either side of the velvet box. I have been keeping me close, he said after a moment. I have been telling myself it was to protect you. It was not. I am sorry. Vivian came across the kitchen. She did not sit. She stood on the other side of the island. She looked at the velvet box, and at his hands on either side of it, and at her own bare ring finger, and at the small ticking radiator under the cold window where the curtain had been pushed half aside. I am not ready to put it back on tonight, she said. I know. I am not. I have not decided whether the place I want to be on Mondays is your floor. I know that too. She nodded. She lifted the velvet box very gently from the wood counter, and she put it in the pocket of her grey sweater. She did not open it. I am going to bed early, she said. Tomorrow's a long one. Vivian. Not tonight, Marcus. I am not ready tonight. He let her go. She did not, in fact, sleep early. She lay on her side of the bed, with the velvet box of her own ring in the pocket of her sweater, and she listened to her husband come up the stairs at 11:15, and stop on the wooden landing for 40 seconds before he came into their bedroom. And she did not turn her head when he sat on the edge of the bed and pulled off his leather shoes. And she lay very still and breathed slowly and pretended, for both their sakes, to be already most of the way under. She woke up at 5:42 on Tuesday. She put on the borrowed grey uniform. She went back to the Aldine Tower. Marcus had set his alarm for 6:15, and he had got up at 5:50, which was 40 minutes earlier than he had got up on any of the previous 16 Tuesdays. And he had put on a soft sweater and his old chinos rather than a suit. And he had taken the subway rather than the car, because he had decided, walking back from the bathroom at 4 in the cold morning, that he was no longer going to spend Tuesdays guessing where his wife went on Mondays. He let himself in through the freight side at 6:48. The night guard nodded at him without surprise, because the cold night guard had seen Marcus come in through the freight side on more than one previous emergency, and assumed there was an emergency. There was no emergency. There was a long cart in the long corridor outside the freight elevator on the loading dock level, and there was the smell of lemon polish, and there was the soft scuffle of warm rags being shaken out, and there was Nora Vega's voice, deep in the long corridor, saying something about the carpet on 23. Marcus did not immediately go upstairs. He stood in the doorway of the loading dock level corridor for a long moment, with his hand around the small file he had told himself he had come in early to fetch, a printed copy of the rate review notes, which he had not actually needed printed, and he listened. He heard his wife's voice, and his wife's voice was not, as he had half feared, hurt. It was a fraction lower than usual, a fraction slower, and it was inside the rhythm of someone else's morning rather than her own, answering a question Nora had asked, then offering a small observation back. They were talking about a kettle. The break-room kettle had given up on Friday, and the new one had not arrived. Nora was saying something about the brand. Vivian was saying something about a brand from when she had been a college student in Albany. Marcus thought, with the small, surprised honesty that comes with overhearing your own wife at 6:48 in the cold morning, that he had not heard his wife sound like this in months. The voice on the other side of the long corridor was the voice of a woman in the middle of a conversation she was not, for once, managing. He stepped into the loading dock level kitchen, and Nora saw him before Vivian did. Nora looked at him. She did not move. She picked up the smaller of the two mugs on the wood counter, a real mug, not a paper cup, with a chip on the handle and a faded printed seal that said East River Community Health on the front. And she filled it with coffee from the metal carafe, and she put it down on the edge of the wood counter beside Vivian without saying anything. Vivian, with her back to the door, took the mug without looking up and said thank you in a tone that was not at all the tone she had used in the kitchen at home the cold night before. Then Vivian turned, the mug halfway to her mouth, and saw her husband in the doorway of the loading dock kitchen at 6:49 on a Tuesday morning in a soft sweater. She did not immediately move. "I came in early for the rate review file," Marcus said. I'm not here to take you home. I was going to be on the slow elevator before you came down. The schedule, as it turns out, was wrong." Nora, behind the wood counter, lifted one carefully neutral eyebrow at the carafe. "Funny thing," she said, in a tone that was not Nora's usual tone at all. "I do not, in this kitchen, remember a man on the brass plate ever coming in through the freight side at 6:45. You can quote me." "I'll quote you," Marcus said. "Mrs. Vega, may I help you with the cart up to 23? You may carry it. The roller is heavy. The wheel on the back left has been giving us a tour of its character. Try not to embarrass it." Vivian set the mug down very carefully on the wood counter. She did not lift her thumb to her ring finger. She looked at her husband across the room, in his soft sweater, and at the cart in the long corridor, and at the small chipped mug Nora had set down beside her hand, and at the precisely calibrated middle distance her marriage had been keeping between the two of them for 16 mornings. And she did not say anything for a moment, because there was nothing short enough to say. "All right," she said in the end. "All right. The carafe goes with the cart. The carafe is heavier than it looks. Don't pour it on the slow elevator. The elevator does not like coffee. Understood. He carried the cart. The cart's wheel did give them a tour of its character. The freight elevator came up slow at 3 minutes to 7, with Nora and Vivian and Marcus and the cart inside it. And Nora did not speak the whole way up, and Marcus did not put his hand on his wife's shoulder, and Vivian, for the first time in 8 Mondays, did not feel the small, unhappy ache in her sternum that came of being inside a small box with the person she most wanted to be inside it with, and not being permitted to say so. Nora unlocked the kitchenette door on 23. Marcus rolled the cart through. The carpet on the partners' floor was, this Tuesday, exactly as it had been on Monday. Nora went to it. Vivian went to the table. Marcus stood for a moment in the kitchenette doorway with his hands in his sweater pockets and watched his wife move around the long room. And after a long moment, he said, "I'm going to start coming down with the cold night shift coffee on Tuesdays from now on, if Nora will have me." "I'll have you," Nora said, without looking up. "Bring better coffee." He left at 7:20. He went up to 24 by the staff stairwell. He did not come back down. Vivian finished the table. The morning ran on. She thought, polishing the long wood with the soft cloth, that the difference between the cold night before and this morning was that nobody had had to say anything that mattered out loud. The difference between Monday's freight elevator and Tuesday's freight elevator was that on Tuesdays, the man on the brass plate had been in the velvet box with her. He had not said the right thing yet. He had not, in fact, said anything particularly clever. He had carried a cart with a bad wheel. It had been enough, for one ride, to thaw an inch. It was, she thought, very far from being enough for everything. She kept polishing. The blog post went up at 11:04. It was on a finance gossip site that nobody at Brennan Ashford officially read, and that everybody at Brennan Ashford had bookmarked. The post was 4 paragraphs long. The headline was a question. Is this Midtown's most invisible wife? And the photograph was a stock photograph of an unidentifiable woman in a long camel coat outside an unidentifiable Aldine-style building. The post was not, technically, about Vivian. The post was technically about the entire category of finance wives whose husbands kept them out of working dinners. There were 3 names in the post. The second name was Marcus's. The line that wrapped around the financial Twitter of Midtown by 12:15 was, "Brennan Ashford's Mrs. B has not been seen at a firm dinner since spring, and reliable sources say her own husband has not asked her to one since June." Kara walked into Marcus's office at 12:17 with the post on her tablet. She did not knock. 1. Somebody on the inside fed this, she said. 2. It was not, I can tell you for certain, anyone you would suspect. 3. Wendell Strick's secretary keeps a Friday lunch with the woman who runs that site. 4. Wendell has been sour about the foundation arm since you put Vivian on it, because he is a man of a certain age, and the foundation arm has been outperforming his rate desk for 3 quarters. 5. The partners' meeting will hear this by 1. 6. Vivian will hear it by the time she gets back to Tribeca, because her clients read finance gossip, and one of them is going to text it to her under the heading of concern. Marcus stood up. He had been on a call. He ended the call without finishing the sentence. He pressed the heel of his hand under his sternum and held it there for a long, quiet count of 3. "Get me Wendell," he said. "Marcus." "Kara, get him." Kara got him. The conversation in Marcus's corner office lasted 9 minutes. Marcus did not raise his voice. He did not, in fact, change his voice at all, which was the version of Marcus that the people who had worked with him the longest were the most quietly afraid of. He told Wendell that he was no longer expected at the Wednesday evening Holloway working dinner. He told Wendell, when Wendell tried to invoke the years of his service, that the years of Wendell's service were the reason that he was being told privately, rather than by an email to the partner group. He told Wendell, at the end of the 9 minutes, that his secretary was welcome to keep her Friday lunches, but that what came out of those lunches in print would be tracked. and that the second item that appeared on that website with a Brennan Ashford name on it would be the last quarter in which Wendell took a draw on the firm. Wendell left. He did not look at Kara on his way out. He did not, in fact, look at anyone. Marcus sat back down at his desk. His hands were not steady. He did not pretend they were. He pressed the heel of one of them against his sternum until they were. He picked up the phone. He looked at his wife's name. He put the phone down. He picked it up. He set it down again. He texted, in the end, a single sentence. I am not asking you to come to the Wednesday dinner. I am asking if you would consider letting me ask you. M. Across town, Vivian read the text at 12:49. She read it 3 times. She did not answer immediately. She had spent the morning quietly. She had gone home from 23 at 8, changed, walked her usual route to the Tribeca office, and by 9:15 she had been in front of 3 small Excel files for 3 small clients, one of which was the East River Community Health bookkeeping account that supplied Nora Vega with the chipped mug. She had eaten an apple at her desk at 11. She had answered an email from the Methodist Mission School in the Bronx about Q2 receipts. She had not, in any minute of those 4 hours, lifted her thumb to her ring finger. When Marcus's text came in at 12:49, she set the phone face down on her notebook and walked over to the small kitchen at the end of the quiet office and made herself a fresh cup of tea, and then she came back to the wood desk and sat down and answered. If you are asking, the answer is yes. Ask properly. V. She watched the 3 dots appear. They appeared, disappeared, appeared again. The reply came at 12:53. Will you please come to the Holloway working dinner Wednesday evening at 5:30? I want you there because I want you there. M. She typed, yes. She did not, this time, erase it. She sent it. She sat at her desk for a long, quiet minute afterwards, with her hand flat on the notebook beside the phone, and the small, uneven warmth in her chest was so unfamiliar that for a moment she could not place it. Then she placed it. She had felt it for the first time in March of the year they got married. She had not, recently, expected to feel it again about the same person. The phone buzzed once more. This time it was Kara. Are you in your office? C. Yes, I'm coming over. I have one thing to ask you. It is not about Wednesday. C. Kara walked through the green door at 1:28. She set her tablet down on Vivian's desk. She did not sit. She said, Marcus wants HR to open a record on the Chen Park associate for the Monday morning incident. Vivian closed her notebook. He told you to ask me first. He didn't. I came on my own. Good. Tell him no. Kara waited. I do not want her named in the formal record, Vivian said. She is 24. She is going to be the partner he wants her to be in 6 years if nobody breaks her this week. The record will follow her. It will follow her into a place that uses it. He should not be the man who opens it. I should not be the person on the other side of it. You can tell him I said that. You can tell him it is final. And if she does it again? She will not do it again. You can't know that. I'm not asking him to trust her. I'm asking him to trust me about her. There's a difference. Kara wrote nothing down. She did not, in fact, even pick the tablet up. She looked at Vivian for a long moment, and then she said, 2. I will tell him exactly what you said. 3. I think you are right. 4. For the record, this is moral courage and not mercy, and I would like you to know that I know the difference. 5. Drink your tea. It's getting cold. Vivian smiled, very small. Thank you, Kara. 5:30 Wednesday, Kara said on her way out. The Holloways like ice in the water. The Holloways do not like wives in the kitchen. Marcus is going to send a car for you at 4:45. Do not wear the silk suit. Wear the navy. The Navy says you have been in conversations like this one before. Understood. Kara left. The green door swung shut. Vivian sat with her tea. She did not see Priya again that day until the late afternoon. It was just past 5. She had gone back to the Aldine Tower at 4 for an unrelated meeting with the Foundation Arms outside council, a 40-minute thing that ran short, and she was walking the long way along the 23rd floor corridor toward the slow elevator bank because the long way passed the wall of windows facing west, and the light at 5 o'clock in late October came in on that wall like a soft hand. The glass conference room at the end of the long corridor, the smaller one, the one with the round table, was lit from the inside. Inside the room, alone, standing with her back to the door and her phone 2 inches from her face, was Priya Chen Park. She did not see Vivian. She was not, this time, performing for anyone on the other end of the phone. She had the phone tilted up so that the photograph on the screen, small, slightly grainy, the way a photograph of a photograph looks, was lit by the late afternoon. The photograph was a woman in scrubs holding a small girl on her hip. The woman in scrubs had Priya's eyes. Priya was not exactly crying. She was standing very still. Her thumb was moving across the glass of the phone in a small, slow arc, the way you might rub dust you could not quite see. Vivian stopped at the doorway. She did not step into the room. She did not knock. She did not, in fact, say anything at all. She stepped back from the door. She walked very quietly the other way along the corridor. She took the south elevator down instead of the north one. She did not, that evening, mention to anyone, not to Kara, not to Nora, not to her husband, that she had seen the new associate alone in a glass room at 5 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon with a photograph of a woman in scrubs on her phone. She kept the small image to herself. She thought, walking through the lobby at 5:04, that some things were owed quietly, and that a person could begin to be the kind of mentor she had once needed by knowing which silences to keep. She put the small image in the same private place she kept the memory of the dean and the bucket. The two of them, in that place, sat very still beside each other. Neither of them did the other any harm. She went home. Wednesday came up cold and very clear. The sky over Hudson Street at 6 was the color of clean steel. Vivian had slept 5 hours, and she had slept them on her own side of the bed, without turning her back to her husband, which was the most uncomplicated sleep she had had in 3 weeks. She did not go to the cleaning crew. Nora had texted her at 10 the night before. "Take Wednesday, the week's long enough. You can quote me." Vivian had read it and smiled, and put the phone face down. She gave herself an extra hour. She came down to the kitchen at 7, in a soft white robe, and Marcus was at the kitchen counter with 2 mugs already poured. He did not turn around. He had heard her on the stair. He set the second mug at her place. "I didn't know if you wanted oat or regular," he said. "I made one of each. I'll drink whichever you don't." "Regular today." He slid the regular toward her. They sat. They did not immediately say anything. The radiator under the kitchen window ticked. Somewhere on Charles Street, a delivery cart went past on its way to the flower shop. "Wendell will not be at the dinner," he said after a while. "I removed him from the partner roster on Tuesday. He is not, as of yesterday afternoon, in any working dinner of the firm for the rest of the calendar year." She nodded. She did not, for a moment, drink her warm coffee. "Bertrand?" "Bertrand is at the dinner. He needs to be. He has the Boston rate desk numbers Devon wants to see. He is not, however, sitting at our end of the table. I asked Mrs. Holloway's assistant to put him on the long side opposite the food." "Thank you." "Vivian." "Not yet, Marcus. The dinner first. Talk to me after." He nodded. He did not press. He drank his coffee. After a long minute, he said, "There's a second thing in the Holloway numbers. I've been on it since 4. She looked up. "I'm going to need a second pair of eyes on it before the 4 o'clock walkthrough," he said. "Kara has been on it with me since 5. We can't get it to come out clean. It is in the legal fee tail. We think the prior fiduciary embedded a self-renewing clause." "Send it over." Are you sure? You have your own day. Send it over. He sent it over. He left for the quiet office at 7:35. He kissed the top of her head before he went, very briefly, not as a question. And she did not move her head away, and she did not nod. And the two of them, in the small kitchen, understood the same thing at the same time, which was that they were not yet on the other side of anything. She walked to her Tribeca office at 9. She unlocked the green door at 9:12. The PDFs from Marcus were waiting in her inbox. There were 46 pages. She made a second cup of coffee. She set out a fresh notebook. She began. It took her until 11:40 to find it. The self-renewing clause was, as Marcus had suspected, embedded inside the legal fee tail, but the embedding had been done so cleanly that the figure read as a year-on-year flat line and not as a compound. The compound, when she unpacked it, ran an extra 1.8% of total fund value a year, which was, over the projected 15-year life of the pension, $23 million going out the side door to a third party that Vivian had to type into a search bar 3 different ways before she could confirm was the same family office that had also held the prior fiduciary. She sat for a long, quiet minute with the printout in her hands. Then she emailed Kara. Then she emailed Marcus. Then she picked up the phone. "Kara," she said, "I have it. It is worse than you thought. The third party is the prior fiduciary's sister. The contract names her trust. The whole thing reads like an inheritance that nobody at the table on Wednesday evening can publicly question without humiliating Mrs. Holloway, because the prior fiduciary was her brother-in-law, and his sister is her niece's godmother. I am writing this out in plain English now. You will have a 1-page memo on your desk by 12:30. She wrote the page. She walked it across town and handed it to Kara at Brennan Ashford reception at 12:56 in a sealed envelope. Not because she did not trust the firm's email, but because she had been raised by a mother who had taught her that an envelope you walked across town was a thing nobody could later say they had not received. Kara took the envelope. She looked at it. 1. Thank you. 2. Marcus is going to want to come down here. 3. I will tell him you are going home to change. 4. Wednesday evening at the Holloways, 5:30. Car at 4:45. Navy suit. 5. Vivian. Yes. Look at me. Vivian looked at her. What you just did is the kind of thing a firm builds an entire decade on. I'm going to remember it. So will Marcus. He'll remember it the way he remembers Wendell, Kara. He'll write a note to himself and put it in a desk drawer. He won't this time. We will see. She left. She walked the long way home. The flower shop on Greenwich had moved the white tulips to the front. She bought a single stem. She brought it home in a sheet of brown paper. She put it in the small jar by the kitchen window. She went upstairs and washed her dark hair. At 2:07, the buzzer on the Tribeca office door rang. Vivian was not, of course, in the Tribeca office. She had gone home to change, but the buzzer rang anyway, 3 times, and the security camera on the green door picked up a young woman in a navy blazer standing on the second-floor landing with a handwritten envelope. The young woman in the navy blazer stood there for 4 minutes. She rang once more. She set the envelope down on the cold floor in front of the door. She did not exactly leave. She walked down the wooden staircase to the street, and she stood on the corner of Greenwich and Hudson for another 14 minutes. And then she came back up the wooden staircase and rang the buzzer one more time. And when the door did not open, she picked the envelope up off the cold floor and folded it into her bag and walked back to the subway. Priya had practiced the apology on the E train. She had practiced it on the J train. She had practiced it walking from the J train to Greenwich Street. The version of it she had practiced on the J train had been short. The version of it she had practiced walking up the wooden staircase had been longer. The version of it she still held in her bag, in the small white envelope, was the longest of the 3. None of them had survived the 4th ring of the buzzer. She went back to the quiet office. She sat at her desk. She did not, for the rest of the afternoon, look anyone in the face. At 3:15, Vivian had not yet left the warm brownstone. The green door buzzer rang again. Vivian had come back to the Tribeca office because she had remembered the navy suit was hanging in the small closet behind her desk, and because the warm brownstone closet had a torn sleeve hem she had not had time to mend. She let herself in at 3:11. She had 4 minutes alone in her own office before the buzzer rang. She looked at the security camera. The young woman in the navy blazer was back. The blazer was the same blazer. The cuff was still tugged down past the wrist. Vivian pressed the buzzer. Priya came up the stairs. She was breathing the particular short breath of a person who has rehearsed something 3 times on 3 different trains and has now run out of trains. She came through the green door at 3:13, and she stood on the inside of it without crossing the small reception area, and she said, in the rapid-fire voice she used when she was performing for friends who were not in the room, "Look, I just need to say, I was having a really rough first day. My mother had been in the ER on Friday night, and I had not slept. And I have to tell you that the version of me that was in your conference room at 7:17 on Monday is not. That is not who I am. I am so much better than that. I am not. I would never want to imply." Vivian let her finish. She did not interrupt. She did not lift her thumb to her ring finger. She watched the young woman in the doorway of her own green office, in a borrowed navy blazer that did not fit her shoulders, run out of rehearsed sentences. When Priya was done, Vivian said, very simply, "What you said was loud enough that the women who were holding the broom heard it. Saying it quietly to me now does not unsay it to them." The air in the quiet office went still. Priya did not immediately answer. She looked at Vivian, and at Vivian's office, and at the framed mission school audit certificate on the wall, and at the small jar of one white tulip on the corner of the wood desk. She tugged the cuff of her blazer down past her wrist. "Look, I am not going to tell you what to do about it," Vivian said. "I am not your supervisor. I am not, formally, anyone at the firm in a position to receive an apology on the firm's behalf. I am the person who heard you. The other people who heard you are downstairs at the Aldine Tower at 6:55 tomorrow morning. What would you— I'm not telling you what to do." Priya stood for a long, quiet second with her hand on the doorframe. "I came here to ask you not to tell your husband," she said, finally, in a much smaller voice. That is what I rehearsed. I came here to ask you not to tell your husband. And I came here, secondly, to give you a letter. The letter is in my bag. The letter is for you. I'm not going to ask you not to tell him anymore. I am going to leave the letter." She set the small white envelope on the corner of the wood desk. She did not look at it after she set it down. She turned, with the rapid, slightly cornered motion of a young person who has used up the last of her practiced sentences, and she crossed the reception area, and she went out through the green door, and she went down the wooden staircase, and she did not come back up. Vivian stood with both hands flat on the wood desk. The white tulip in the jar moved, very slightly, in the small draft from the closing door. She did not pick up the envelope. She crossed the office. She went into the small closet. She took the navy suit off its hanger. She held it for a long, quiet second. She put it on. She did the small line of buttons up the front. She looked at herself in the closet mirror. The woman in the closet mirror looked tired, and slightly older than she had on Monday morning. And the tired version of her looked, around the eyes, the way her mother had looked at the same age, which was the closest thing to courage Vivian, at 28, had ever been able to claim as her own. She went home. She had 3 hours. Marcus was waiting in the kitchen when she came in. He had not gone back to the office after lunch. He had come home at 2:30, with a thin paper bag from a stationer's on Spring Street, and a small box of crackers under his arm. She stopped in the doorway. She looked at the crackers. "You did not," she said. "I did. Carr's whole wheat. They had 3 boxes. I took 1. The man in the shop looked at me like a person who had not bought crackers in a very long time." "You have not bought crackers in a very long time." "That is, in fact, the case." She came into the kitchen. She set her coat over the back of one of the stools. He had put 2 mugs out on the wood counter. He had put the small velvet box back in the drawer of her dresser at lunch without being asked, and he had told her so by text at 1:58, and he was not, just now, looking at her left hand. He was looking at the box of crackers. "Sit down with me," he said. She sat. He put the kettle on. He cut 3 crackers into halves on a small wooden board. He put a thin slice of cheddar on each half. He set the board on the wood counter between them. The kitchen smelled of bread and warm cheese, and the small, unidentifiable smell of October afternoon that came in through the cold window from the back garden. "We have 3 hours," she said. "We have 3 hours. This is not a working meeting." "No." They ate 2 of the crackers each. They did not immediately speak. Marcus made the tea. He poured for both of them. He sat down on the stool beside her, not opposite, because the stool opposite had become, in the last 16 weeks, the seat from which they had had every conversation she had not wanted to have. "I have been thinking," he said, "about the first apartment. The one on 102nd. The one with the warm radiator that did not work. And the kitchen with the linoleum. And the crackers. And the crackers." He set his hand on the counter between them. He did not, this time, put it on top of hers. He set it palm up, an inch from her hand, the way a man offers a hand he is not certain is wanted. She looked at it for a long, quiet second. Then she set her own hand on top of his, palm down. "Tell me about the first apartment," she said. He told her. He told her, in small, careful sentences, about the warm radiator that had not worked, and the heater they had borrowed from the building super, and about the linoleum, and the brand of crackers they had eaten because it was the only brand that was 3 for $10 at the bodega on the corner. He told her about the first time he had brought her to a firm dinner, a junior associate's wedding, in the basement of a Greek restaurant in Astoria, which his uncle had attended for 45 minutes before going home, and about how she had spent the second hour at the wedding sitting on the kitchen step with the bride's grandmother, and the bride's grandmother had told her, very seriously, that the man Vivian had brought looked at her the way her own husband had looked at her in 1958. He told her he had never forgotten the look on her face when she came back from the kitchen step at the end of the second hour. She had forgotten it. She had forgotten, in fact, a great deal of how he had looked at her in their first months together, because she had taught herself, over the year that followed their wedding, not to count on it. She had taught herself, in particular, not to count on it on Mondays. "I've not been looking at you like that," he said. "I've been looking past you. I've been telling myself that the reason was that I was busy. The reason was not that I was busy." She did not immediately answer. "What was the reason?" she said, after a moment. He pressed the heel of his hand under his sternum. "My father walked out of my mother's hospital room because he could not look at her," he said. "I have told you this. I have told you this twice. What I have not told you is that I have been deciding, since long before I met you, exactly which version of a wife I would be willing to look at. I had a list. I did not know I had it. The list had what I now realize was a rule on it that you would never be in a uniform in my building. The rule was not yours. The rule was mine. The rule has been keeping us out of the same room for 16 mornings." She did not move. She felt the small, uneven warmth in her chest from Tuesday afternoon. It was, this time, sharper. "I do not want a list," he said. "I do not want a rule. Vivian, I want to be married to you on Mondays at 7 in the morning. I want to be married to you in a borrowed uniform, and I want to be married to you in a navy suit. I do not want to choose between them. I have been choosing between them. I am stopping. Tonight. The dinner. Then everything else." She breathed once. She breathed again. The small radiator under the cold window ticked. "All right," she said. "All right?" "All right. The dinner. Then everything else." He turned his hand under hers. She let him. He did not, this time, put his thumb on the empty band of skin on her ring finger. He set the back of his hand against her palm, very lightly, the way you set a small bird against your hand to see whether it will go on standing there of its own choice. The bird stood there. They sat in the kitchen with the second cup of tea for a long, quiet minute. The light moved across the counter. The small jar with the white tulip. Vivian had set it there at noon, caught the gold of the late afternoon. Marcus reached across to it without comment and turned it half an inch, so that the warm cup of the tulip faced them. "That's better," he said. She almost laughed. The almost laugh came out as a breath through her nose. "It is," she said. "I made one joke. I made it before the dinner. I think that counts." "That counts." He smiled. He looked, just then, the way he had looked across the kitchen step at the Astoria wedding in the second hour. She made herself remember it. She made herself remember it precisely. She did not, in that moment, know that she would need the memory of it in 3 hours' time. She did not, in fact, know it at 4 o'clock when she went upstairs to put on the navy. She did not know it at 4:45 when the car came. She did not know it at 5:31 when Mrs. Holloway's housekeeper opened the door of the Holloway family office townhouse on East 71st Street, and Devon Holloway, in a soft grey cardigan and old corduroys, kissed her on both cheeks and said, "Funny thing, I was just telling Marcus that the last working dinner in this room without a wife at the table was 1986. I am, personally, glad to see the streak ended." She thought, walking into the wood-panelled dining room behind her husband, that she had felt this evening turn from a possible into a likely. She was wrong about the dinner. She did not know it for 90 minutes. The dining room at the Holloway townhouse on East 71st Street had not been redecorated since 1979. It had pine panelling stained a colour that had once been called London Brown and was now called nothing at all, because the people who had once known the name were no longer at any of the working dinners that mattered. The table seated 14. Wednesday evening, it seated 9. Devon Holloway was at the head. His mother, Mrs. Vera Holloway, 91, in a high-collared cream blouse and a pair of small pearl studs, was at his right hand. Marcus and Vivian were across from each other on the long side closest to the window. Cara was beside Vivian. Bertrand Mailloux was on the opposite long side, 3 seats down from Marcus, with the Boston rate desk binder open in front of him on the placemat. 2 Holloway side lawyers and a junior accountant filled out the rest. The first 90 minutes were the kind of working dinner that the people in the room had been having since they were in their 30s. The food came in courses, but the conversation did not pause for it. Devin ran the agenda from a soft leather folio. The corned beef sandwiches from Reuben's Deli arrived at 8 on a single long tray and were eaten standing, which was a Holloway tradition that Marcus had warned Vivian about in the car. The legal fee tale came up at item 9. It came up the way Vivian and Cara and Marcus had walked it through at 4 o'clock in the smaller conference room on 24. Marcus laid the page out flat on the table. He took Mrs. Holloway and Devon through it in plain English. He did not, when he reached the part Vivian had unpacked, name her. He had asked her in the car whether he should. She had said no. She had said she did not need the public credit. She had said she would, in fact, prefer the room to take the catch as a Brennan Ashford catch, rather than as a wife's catch, because the Holloways would later need to think of it as a firm catch when the time came to write the trust. Marcus did not name her. Bertrand named her. He did it at item 11, 20 minutes later, in the small, comfortable lull that comes in a working dinner after the hard item has been carried. "I want to say, with all respect to the work Marcus did this afternoon," Bertrand said, lifting his water glass, "that the legal fee tail catch was an outside catch, and we should not let ourselves get too comfortable that we would have caught it in-house. It was caught by Marcus's wife. Mrs. Brennan is, I understand, a very capable bookkeeper for non-profits, and she has been working with the foundation arm on the scholarship piece for some months. It is a credit to the firm that we have had a fresh, outside set of eyes on the numbers. It is also, frankly, a small warning. The kind of detail Mrs. Brennan caught is the kind of detail we should already have caught. We will be tightening up. Mrs. Holloway smiled at Vivian across the table. What a thing, dear, she said. Marcus, why on earth was she not at our spring dinner? She is rising above her background quite beautifully. Devon, you must put her on the list for the May fundraiser. The air in the room did the small, particular thing the cool air in rooms does when a sentence has landed in a place nobody at the table can publicly object to without making things worse. Devon's eyebrows moved a quarter inch and then did not move further. Kara, beside Vivian, set her water glass down very slowly. The junior accountant looked at his lap. Marcus said nothing. He said nothing because, at the precise moment the sentence landed, he had been turning a page in the legal fee tail document to confirm a footnote that Devon had asked about, and his attention had been entirely inside the page. And by the time he understood what Mrs. Holloway had said, the moment in which a husband could have moved a chair to occupy the soft silence on his wife's behalf had already passed. Vivian lifted her own water glass. She lifted it with a steady hand. She smiled at Mrs. Holloway across the table, the way her mother had taught her to smile at people who had not meant any harm and were not in a position to be told that they had done some. It is very kind of you to say so, Mrs. Holloway, she said. I'd be glad to come to the May fundraiser. I'll watch for Devon's invitation. She drank one slow swallow of water. She set the glass down. She did not, at any point, look at her husband. The dinner went on for 40 more minutes. Marcus did not, in the 40 minutes, find a moment in which a man could go back and replace a thing he had failed to say. He looked for one. He looked for one 3 or 4 times. The moment had not been the kind of moment that left an opening for it. He drank his water. He answered Devon's last 3 questions. He kept his hand off his sternum, because Kara was watching him with the particular fixed stare of a chief of staff who has noticed that her CEO has not, in fact, been doing the only job at this table she could not do for him. At 9:40, Devon closed the folio. He stood. He shook Marcus's hand. He shook Vivian's hand, and held it a second longer than was strictly polite. Funny thing, he said. I would not have caught that tale. I doubt my mother's brother caught it either, may he be uninterrupted. Mrs. Brennan, you have done us a service. Marcus, you have done us another. We will be in touch in the morning. Mrs. Holloway nodded at Vivian, very kindly. Such a lovely young woman, Marcus. You should bring her every time. They went down the steps of the townhouse at 9:46. The car was waiting. Marcus held the door open for her. She did not, for a long, quiet second, get in. Marcus. Yes. I would like the car to take me home. I would like you to go back to the office with Kara and Bertrand. There are 3 loose pieces on the Boston binder. I do not need you with me tonight. I need you to close the night. Vivian, about Bertrand. About what Mrs. Holloway. Not tonight, Marcus. I am asking you to take Bertrand back. Please. He looked at her in the small, cold air on the steps of the townhouse on East 71st Street. He looked at her, and he heard exactly what she was asking, and he heard the version of her voice she had used in the kitchen at home on Tuesday evening, the version that said, "Not tonight, Marcus. I am not ready tonight." And he understood, 8 hours too late, that the version of his wife who had asked him to take Bertrand back was not the version of his wife who needed him to be a strategist tonight. He took Bertrand back anyway. He took Bertrand back because he was, on the question of what his wife needed at any given hour, still the man who had been keeping a private list in a drawer for 10 years. He took Bertrand back because he heard the words she had said, and not the tone she had said them in. He took Bertrand back because, at 9:46 on East 71st Street, with the night cold beginning to bite, he was not yet the man he had told her at 3 o'clock he was stopping being. He kissed her, lightly, on the temple. He told her he would be home by midnight. He helped her into the car. He shut the door. He turned and walked back up the steps to where Kara and Bertrand were already setting the binders out on the small consultation table by the front door, because the Holloways had told them, on the way out, that they could use the consultation room for the closing for as long as they wanted. The car pulled away. Vivian sat in the back seat with the small white envelope from her Tribeca office desk in her leather purse. She had not yet opened it, and she did not, for the first 10 blocks, do anything at all. She did not put her thumb on her ring finger. She had taught herself, over 8 Mondays, not to. She put her thumb on the inside of her left wrist instead, and she counted her own pulse. And she was, in fact, perfectly steady. And the steadiness of her pulse on the inside of her wrist in the back of a car driving down Park Avenue at 9:53 on a Wednesday evening was the loneliest specific physical fact of her adult life so far. At Park and 57th, the car stopped at a red light. She watched a couple cross the avenue arm in arm. The woman was laughing about something. The man was carrying a paper bag from a Korean grocer that had split at the bottom corner. A scallion had fallen out and was lying on the asphalt of the crosswalk. The woman bent down and picked it up. She put it back in the bag. She did not stop laughing. The man kissed the side of her head while she was bent down. The light changed. They were gone. Vivian closed her eyes. She opened them. The car had turned onto Charles Street. She let herself in the front door of the warm brownstone at 10:11. She did not turn the kitchen light on. She walked through the kitchen by the light of the street lamp in the back garden. She set her leather purse on the counter beside the small jar with the white tulip. The jar was still in the place Marcus had turned it that afternoon. The cup of the tulip was still facing the seat where she had been sitting. She stood in front of the jar for a long, quiet minute. She thought, which of the 2 men I am married to do I, in fact, live with? She thought, he did not, this afternoon, set out a list. He set out a kitchen. He set out the same Carr's whole wheat crackers from the apartment on 102nd. He set out the back of his hand against my palm, and he did not put his thumb on my empty ring finger. He told me he was stopping. He told me tonight, the dinner, then everything else. She thought, he did not, at the dinner, say one sentence. She thought, the sentence Mrs. Holloway said about the spring fundraiser was not, by itself, the wound. The wound was that the man who had told me, 3 hours before, that he wanted to be married to me in a borrowed uniform, did not, at 9:22 on East 71st Street, find one sentence in his throat with which to be married to me in a navy suit. She thought, does he really think he can do both? She thought, maybe he really thinks he can do both, and he is finding out tonight that he cannot. Maybe he really cannot. Maybe the list is older than I knew it was. Maybe the kitchen this afternoon was an apology for the part of the list he was prepared to put down, and the part of the list he keeps for evenings is a part he does not know how to put down yet. Maybe he meant what he said this afternoon, and the meaning was only good for daylight. The kitchen was very quiet. She did not, for a long moment, move. She crossed to the counter. She took her left hand out of her coat pocket. She held it flat against the wood. The empty band of skin on her ring finger was very pale in the light from the street lamp. She did not have her ring on her hand. She had not, in fact, had it on her hand since Tuesday week. The ring was upstairs in the drawer of her dresser, in the small velvet box that Marcus had put back in the drawer at lunch on Wednesday, without being asked. She went upstairs. She opened the drawer. She took the box out. She brought it back down to the kitchen. She set it on the counter beside the small jar with the white tulip. She did not open it. She wrote nothing on a note. She left no note. She did not turn the kitchen light on. She picked up her leather purse. She went back out of the warm brownstone at 10:31. She walked to the corner of Greenwich and Charles. She took a taxi to Tribeca. She unlocked the green door at 10:52. She sat at her own desk in the dark. She did not turn the warm lamp on. She did not open her notebook. She did not, for the next half hour, do anything at all. At 11:27, her phone began, very softly, to buzz on the wood desk. It was Marcus. She watched it. She did not pick up. She let it go to voicemail. The phone buzzed once more, a single text. I am at home. The box is on the counter. Vivian, please. M. She read it. She did not answer. She turned the phone face down on the desk. After a long minute, she turned it off entirely. She set it on the second shelf of the bookcase behind her desk. She set her leather purse on the desk, and the small white envelope from Priya inside the purse, still unopened. She did not, that night, open it. She had no room, that night, for any third person. At 12:15, Marcus knocked at the green door from the cold sidewalk and rang the buzzer. Vivian heard it. She did not move. He knocked again at 12:17. She did not move. At 12:21, he knocked one more time, and then she heard, through the second-floor window, the small, particular sound of a man sitting down on the bottom step of the wooden staircase to the green door. He sat there for a long time. She could not see him from where she was sitting in the dark of her office, and she did not get up to look. She thought, with the very clear, small voice that came to her at 12:30 on a Wednesday night, with her own warm breath the only sound in the room, what if my husband really cannot do both? She thought, maybe my husband really cannot do both. Maybe the man he told me he was stopping being is the man he is. Maybe the kitchen this afternoon was the best afternoon I will have with him, and I should be glad I had it, and I should not, tomorrow morning, ask him to give me one I cannot have. Maybe my mother was right. Maybe people who love you really do start, in the end, counting the cost. The thought went on. She let it. She did not, that night, fight it. She did not pick up the phone and call Nora. She did not pick up the phone and call Kara. She did not open the small white envelope from Priya. She did not put her own ring on. She did not, at any point between 12:15 and 4, look out of the second-floor window at the bottom step where her husband was sitting. He sat there until 4:05. He went home at 4:05 because the morning crew at the Aldine Tower came on at 5, and he did not want, on this particular night of his marriage, to be the man who was found on a stranger's stoop in Tribeca by a member of his own night-cleaning team. He went home. The kitchen was as Vivian had left it. The velvet box was on the counter. The jar with the white tulip was on the counter. He sat on the kitchen stool and pressed the heel of his hand under his sternum and held it there for a long, quiet count of 30. And he did not, for the first time in 2 years of his marriage, find it in himself to think the thought that always came in this position. The thought was, I will do better tomorrow. He could not think it. He pressed his hand against his sternum, and the thought would not come. He sat in the kitchen with the box and the tulip in front of him, and he understood, with the small, clear honesty he had been afraid of for a decade, that I will do better tomorrow was the sentence his father had used to leave his mother's hospital room. He understood that he had been using it too. He understood that the right sentence, the one he had not yet, in any night of his marriage, said, was the much harder sentence of not promising anything at all, and instead naming the specific thing he had not done, and the specific cost he was going to pay for not having done it. He did not, that night, find the sentence. He did, however, write the first line of it down on a piece of paper from the kitchen drawer, because he was a man who took notes on his own behavior, and because he had read, somewhere a long time ago, that you did not get to be a different man until you were willing to write the first line down. The first line said, I did not, at the table at 9:22, say one sentence. I'm going to come and tell you that I did not say it, and I'm going to tell you what I should have said, and I'm going to leave the firm at 2 on Thursday afternoon to do it. I am leaving the Holloway closing in Kara's hands at 2. I do not need a third party to close my own marriage. He folded the piece of paper. He put it in the inside pocket of his coat. He did not, this time, write it 3 times. He went up to the dark bedroom. The bedroom was empty. He sat on the edge of his side of the bed, and he took off his leather shoes, and he set them on the rug, and he did not, that night, sleep. Thursday morning came in soft and grey at 6. Vivian had slept 90 minutes on the small sofa in the back room of her Tribeca office, in her navy suit, with her coat folded over her as a blanket. The radiator in the back room hissed quietly through the night, the way the warm radiator on 102nd had hissed 11 years earlier. She woke up at 6:14, with the small white envelope from Priya still in her leather purse on the desk, still unopened, and she sat up on the sofa and pressed both hands flat against her knees for a long, quiet second, and decided, finally, that she would open it. She opened it. The letter inside was a single sheet of legal paper, written in a young woman's careful, narrow hand, 3 sides full. The first paragraph was the rehearsed paragraph. The second paragraph began, "I'm not asking you for anything. I'm not asking you not to tell your husband. I am asking myself a question, which is whether I came to this firm to climb or to climb over." The third paragraph said, "I do not yet know the answer. I am 24 years old, and the only person in my family who has ever had any of these chairs to sit at is, this morning, me. I want to deserve the wooden chair. I do not know yet how to deserve it without breaking myself or someone else." The last line said, "I am sorry for what I said in the quiet conference room on Monday at 7:17. I am more sorry for the fact that I would not have apologized if I had not, at 11, walked in and seen who you were." Vivian read it twice. She folded it. She put it back in the envelope. She put the envelope in her notebook. She made herself a cup of tea. She turned her phone back on at 6:49. There were 11 messages from Marcus between 11:27 Wednesday evening and 4:07 Thursday morning. There were 2 voicemails. There was a single text at 6:38 that said, "I am at the office. The Holloway closing is at 1. I am leaving Cara to run it at 2. I will be at the green door by 2:30. If the door is locked, I will not ring the buzzer. I will go. Please, read this far. M." She read that far. She did not immediately answer. She stood up. She walked once around her office. She drank half her tea. She sat back down at her desk. She typed 1 line. "I will be here. V." She sent it. She set the phone back on the desk. She did not pick it up again before 9. The morning went the way her mornings had been going for 2 months. She took a phone call from the East River Community Health bookkeeper. She wrote a follow-up note to the Methodist Mission School in the Bronx. She did not, for a single hour, lift her thumb to her ring finger. She had taught herself, over 8 Mondays, not to. She found, this Thursday morning, that the muscle was no longer in the habit. At 1:58, Marcus stood up in the smaller conference room on 24 of the Aldine Tower and set his pen down on top of the legal fee tail document and pushed his chair back from the table. The Holloway closing had been going for 58 minutes. Devon Holloway was, just then, in the middle of a sentence about the discretionary contingency line. "Devon," Marcus said, "I am, with the deepest possible apology, going to have to step out of the rest of this. Cara has the file. Cara has had the file since Friday. I'm going to ask you to close it with Cara. I have something to do at 2:30 that, in the order of priorities I've spent this week reorganizing, is the only item ahead of this meeting on my list." Devon lifted his eyebrows a 1/4 inch. He did not lift them further. He had been at his uncle's funeral. He had known Marcus's uncle for 41 years. "Funny thing," he said, mildly. "It is not the first time someone has walked out of a Holloway closing for a private reason. It is the first time anyone has had the manners to tell me about it before he stood up. Cara, are you ready?" "I have been ready since Friday." "Then we are also ready. Marcus, go. We will close the file in your name." Marcus nodded. He shook Devon's hand. He shook Mrs. Holloway's hand. He nodded at Cara. He went out of the smaller conference room on 24 at 2:01. He took the south elevator down to the lobby. He took a taxi. He was at the corner of Greenwich and Hudson at 2:22. He walked the last block. He stood on the cold sidewalk below the green door for 30 seconds. He did not, this time, ring the buzzer. He took out the piece of paper from the inside pocket of his coat. He read the first line one more time. He folded it. He climbed the staircase. The green door opened when he was 3 steps short of the wooden landing. Vivian stood inside it. She did not immediately move out of the doorway. "Come in," she said. He came in. She shut the door behind him. She did not, this time, offer him tea. She did not, this time, lift her thumb to her ring finger. She gestured at the wooden chair across from her desk. He sat. She sat opposite. The small jar with the white tulip, she had brought it with her from the brownstone, was on the corner of the desk. The cup of the tulip was facing him. "I did not, at the table at 9:22, he said, "say one sentence." "You did not." "I have been writing it down since 4. The right sentence. I did not, last night, find it. I have it now. May I say it?" "Say it." He took the piece of paper out of his coat pocket. He did not, in the end, read it. He set it on the desk between them. He pressed the heel of his hand under his sternum for a long, quiet count of 3. He looked at his wife. "Mrs. Holloway said you were rising above your background. Bertrand said the catch was an outside catch. The sentence I should have said, the sentence I am saying to you now, is that the only catch in that legal fee tale belonged to my wife. And my wife is not rising above anything, because my wife was not, in fact, beneath any of you to begin with. The only person at that table on Wednesday evening with a chair he had not earned was me. I have been sitting in that chair because my uncle left it to me. My wife is sitting in her chair because she walked across town with an envelope. That is the sentence. I should have said it at 9:22. I did not." She did not, for a moment, answer. "There is more," he said. "May I?" "Yes. I am going to do 4 things this week. I am going to put your name on the firm's foundation board as a voting member by Friday afternoon. I am going to put the Ash bookkeeping practice on the firm's referral list publicly by Monday, because the kind of small non-profits I should have been sending to you for 2 years are the kind of small non-profits I've been sending to a friend of my uncle's, because I did not, on those Mondays, think it through. I am cancelling the Friday firm dinner that conflicts, this month, with the evening you and I used to take for ourselves. And I'm going to ask you, not tonight, not tomorrow, but when it is the right time, and you will know when it is, to put your ring back on, because you choose to, not because I asked. The ring is on the counter at home where you left it. I have not, this morning, moved it. I am not going to move it. I am not going to move it until you do." The tulip on the corner of the desk caught the early afternoon light from the window. Vivian did not, for a long, quiet minute, speak. "You walked out of the Holloway closing," she said finally. "I walked out at 2. Devon let you." Devon has the manners of a man whose uncle taught him manners. He took it well. He told me to go. "You left Kara holding the file." "Kara has had the file since Friday." "Marcus." "Yes." "I want to be married to you, not staged with you." He breathed once. "I know." "That is the only thing I am going to say today. Everything else I can wait on." "All right. All right." They sat in the small green office for a long, quiet minute. The radiator in the back room, very softly, ticked. After a while she reached across the desk, and she did not, this time, take the back of his hand. She picked up the piece of paper. She unfolded it. She read it. She read it slowly. She folded it again. She put it inside the notebook, where she had put Priya's letter that morning. "I am going to keep this," she said. "Yes." "I am going home with you this evening. Not now, at 6. I have one client at 4. After the client, I will come home. Tonight, the kitchen. Tomorrow morning, the freight elevator. With Nora. With you, if Nora will have you again. Nora will have me. You can quote her. He almost laughed. It came out as a breath through his nose. He set both his hands flat on the desk between them. He did not, this time, reach across. She reached across. She set her left hand on top of his right hand, palm down. The empty band of skin on her ring finger was very pale in the afternoon light. He did not look at it. She did not, this time, mind that he didn't. The bird stood there. Friday morning at the green door, at 8:41, Priya Chen Park climbed the second-floor staircase over the stationers, paused on the wooden landing for the length of 3 slow breaths, and knocked. She had been at her own desk on 23 since 6:50. She had a folded sheet of office stationery in her right hand, and a second sheet, the one with the firm's bookkeeping referral footer on the bottom, in her left. Vivian opened the door. She did not, this morning, lift her thumb to her ring finger, because the ring was already on her ring finger. She had put it back on at 6:04 in the kitchen, alone, before her husband came down, because it was the morning she wanted to put it on, and not the morning anyone had asked her to. Ms. Chen Park. Mrs. Brennan. Come in. Priya came in. She did not immediately sit. She held out the folded sheet of office stationery first. This goes to Nora, she said. I would like to have given it to her in person on 23 at 7 this morning. Nora does not come up to 23 on Fridays. The cleaning crew is on 26 on Fridays. I went up to 26. Nora was not there either. She was at the loading dock at 7:15, and her supervisor told me she would not be back upstairs until after 12. I will go back at 1. I wanted, before I went back, to bring you a copy. Vivian took the sheet. She did not immediately open it. You are bringing me the copy because the thing I said on Monday at 6:55, I said in the long corridor between the freight elevator and the kitchenette, where Nora and Inez Dominguez and Marta Pereira were standing within hearing. I said it loud enough for the 3 of them to hear, and I said it about the woman they were standing next to who they thought was one of them. The apology I am putting in Nora's hand at 1 this afternoon is on the same floor and at the same volume and to the same 3 women. I do not know yet whether they will accept it. I'm not asking them to. I am asking them to let me say it. Vivian opened the sheet. She read it. It was short. It was 4 sentences. The 4th sentence was, I will shadow the facilities crew on the next 4 Friday mornings, 6:45 to 7:45, beginning today, if Nora, Inez, and Marta will have me. The signature at the bottom said, Priya Chen Park, in the narrow, careful hand. It is 6 lines, Vivian said. It is the length of what I said. I counted. Vivian folded it. She handed it back. She did not, this time, keep it. What is the second sheet? Priya looked down at her own left hand. This one is to the firm. It is a memo I am leaving for Cara Solomon to circulate at her discretion. It says, in 2 paragraphs, that beginning Monday, all incoming associate hires on the foundation arm and the corporate arm will shadow facilities for 1 hour on their first Friday, and that I am volunteering to be the first shadow before I require it of anyone behind me. I would like you to read it before I leave it on Cara's desk. I would like... She stopped. She pressed both heels of her hands against the seams of her skirt. I would like to know if you think the second paragraph is too much. I do not want this to be theatre. I have done enough theatre this week. Vivian took the second sheet. She read it. The second paragraph was, in fact, slightly too long. She did not, however, say so. It is not theatre, she said. It is a memo. Memos that begin with, I will shadow first, are, as a category, the kind of memos this firm has not historically written. Leave it on Cara's desk. Cara will tell you if the second paragraph is too long. She will be right when she tells you. Listen to her. I will. One other thing. Yes. I am not going to mention either sheet to my husband this evening. I am not going to mention either sheet to my husband next week. If Cara circulates the memo, My husband will read it like everyone else. If Nora accepts the Friday shadow, the corridor outside the kitchenette will tell him before I do. I'm telling you that I will not be carrying this for you. It is not mine to carry. I understand. Good. Priya did not, then, leave. She stood for a long second, with the second sheet held against the front of her blazer, and she looked at Vivian. And Vivian saw what she had seen on Wednesday morning through the glass of the quiet conference room. A young woman who was 24, and the only one in her family who had ever had any of these chairs to sit at, and who had not yet decided whether she had come here to climb, or to climb over, and who, this morning, was doing the third thing, which was to climb down one rung first, and look at the wooden chair from underneath it, before she sat in it. Look, Priya said. Her voice was, this time, level. It did not break. It did not perform. I owed it loud. That is all I came to say. You did. That is the apology. I do not have a longer one. I do not want to use up your mourning with a longer one. That is the right length. Priya nodded once. She left. The green door clicked. Vivian sat down at her desk. She did not, for a long, quiet minute, do anything else. Then she picked up her pen, and she wrote, on the back of an envelope that had come from East River Community Health that morning, 2 words for herself. She did not read them. She put the envelope in the inside pocket of her notebook. The 2 words were, well done. She did not, she would tell Marcus much later, mean herself. The Monday morning after, at 6:53, the freight elevator on 23 opened, and Vivian Brennan stepped out of it in her own clothes. She was wearing the soft grey sweater from the brownstone, and dark trousers, and the low brown loafers she wore on Mondays at her own office, and the small gold ring on her left hand caught the corridor light, the way it had used to. She had not borrowed anyone's uniform. She had walked the 8 blocks from West Village in the same coat she always wore. The doorman in the lobby had said, "Good morning, Mrs. Brennan," the way he had been saying it for 2 years. And she had said good morning back, the way she had been saying it back for 2 years. And nothing in the lobby had changed, except that the woman walking through it knew, this morning, that she belonged in both directions of the slow elevator, and not just one. Nora was at the freight side of 23 at 6:55. So was Inez. So was Marta. So, also, was Priya Chen Park, in a plain navy jumper and dark jeans, with her dark hair pulled back the way Nora's hair was pulled back, holding a small white plastic spray bottle in one hand and a folded soft rag in the other. Mrs. Brennan, Nora said. Nora? You are not, this morning, on the schedule. I am not. I came in to drop off a corrected subsheet for Kara. I will be at my own office at 9. That tracks. Vivian did not immediately leave. She looked at Priya. Priya was at the long window on the south side of 23, polishing the inside of the glass in slow, careful figure 8s. Nora was watching her work, and not exactly helping, and not exactly correcting. And the way Nora was watching her was the way Nora had once watched a new hire on her own crew, 11 years ago, on the 4th Friday, when the new hire had finally stopped polishing in stripes and started polishing in figure 8s without being told. How is she doing? Vivian said, low. She did her first Friday. She asked to do Mondays too. I said yes. She is doing all right. She does not, yet, know how to hold a spray bottle without tipping it forward. She will. The 3rd shift is when they figure it out. That tracks too. Mrs. Brennan. Yes? The corridor between the kitchenette and the freight side. The Monday before last. I did not, at the time, say anything to anyone about what I heard. I do not, this morning, plan to. I am telling you that I did not. I would like the credit for what I did not do, because the credit for what I did not do is the only credit on a cleaning crew that is worth keeping. You have it. Thank you. Nora went back to watching Priya. Inez went back to her own corner. Marta lifted a hand in a small wave. Vivian lifted a hand back. She did not, this time, lift her thumb to her ring finger. She crossed 23 to the partner's kitchenette. She set the corrected subsheet on the corner of Kara's desk with a single yellow sticky note that said, in her own narrow hand, B7 final, no further changes. VB. She did not, this morning, sign her maiden name. She did not, this morning, need to. She turned to go. The kitchenette door swung open. Marcus came through it. He was holding a small white paper tray with 5 coffees in it. 2 were black, 2 had milk, 1 had milk and 2 sugars. He did not immediately see her. He was looking down at the tray, counting it for the second time. And when he did see her, he stopped in the doorway with the tray held against his chest, like a thing he was not sure he had permission to be carrying. "You are not, this morning, on the schedule," she said. "I am not. I asked Nora on Friday at 11 if she would let me bring coffees on Mondays. Nora said yes, on the condition that I never deliver the wrong order to the wrong person. I have, this morning, double-checked. The black ones are Inez and Marta. The milk ones are Nora and Priya. The 2 sugar one is yours. Mine is at my own office at 9. This one is here, at 6:57. The one at 9 is yours too. I wanted—" He stopped. He pressed the heel of his hand under his sternum for a count of 2. "I wanted, this morning, to bring you the one at 6:57. She took the warm cup with the 2 sugars. She held it. She did not, immediately, drink from it. She looked at him over the rim. "You walked out of a Holloway closing for me on Thursday." "I did." "You put my name on the foundation board on Friday afternoon." "I did." "You cancelled the firm dinner that overlapped with our Mondays." "I did." "And on Monday morning you are, at 6:57, bringing coffees to the cleaning crew." "I am." All 4 of those, separately, would be adequate. Together, in 1 week, they are nearly enough. He nodded. He did not, this time, ask what nearly meant. He had learned, in the 11 days since Monday the 19th, that the right answer to nearly was to wait. She took 1 sip of the coffee with 2 sugars. "Drop the rest of those," she said. "Nora likes the milk ones distributed in the order the women got to the freight side. Inez first, then Marta, then Nora, then Priya. Priya last on purpose. Nora will not tell you that out loud. I am telling you on her behalf." "Got it." "And Marcus." "Yes." "At 9, the coffee at my office is yours to drink there, not mine. I am bringing the one for you. We are, this morning, the kind of married where one of us brings the morning coffee to the other one's office on a weekday, because it is, just, what we are doing on a Monday in October. That is the kind of married I have been waiting 2 years to be. We are it now." He almost laughed. It came out as the same breath through his nose. He did not, this time, try to set the tray down. He did not, this time, reach across for her hand. The ring on her left hand caught the corridor light. He saw it. He did not say anything about it. He did not need to. "I will see you at 9, he said. "You will." He went down the corridor with the tray. Vivian watched him go. Nora watched him go. Nora was usually right. Vivian crossed 23 to the south elevator. She wrote it down. She crossed the lobby in her own coat. The doorman said, "Good morning, Mrs. Brennan," the way he had been saying it for 2 years, and she said good morning back. She walked the 8 blocks to her green door over the stationers. The November sun, this morning, did not come out from behind the clouds, and she did not, this morning, need it to. She had been, on the Monday before last, the quiet cleaning lady at 7 in the morning. She had been, on the Monday before last, also the wife at noon. The 2 had stood, that morning, at opposite ends of a corridor. This morning, on the corner of Greenwich and Hudson, climbing the wooden staircase to her green door at 7:41, with the ring on her hand and the taste of 2 sugars in her mouth, the 2 stood in one place. She unlocked the green door. She went in. She took off her coat. She sat down at her desk. She opened the first ledger of the morning. The bird stood there,